الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطاهرين الطيبين المعصومين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. I would of course like to begin by welcoming Anwar, Brother Anwar in Islamic Relief, who's been, if not for Islamic Relief, I say very honestly that had they not funded the work that moved into this building, we could not have done it. And I would like to thank you for being an advocate for people living in poverty and for stepping up and for believing in what we're doing in Southeast Michigan and around the world. It's been a wonderful partnership. And for Sheikh Muhammad Al-Hali, welcome to the epicenter. My brother, dear brother, Sayyid Mahdi Mudarrisi, thank you so much for being in Dearborn as well, and my brother as well, Sayyid Mustafa. It's my honor and pleasure to share the podium with these brothers. It really, truly is. We have lifelong friendships here, and is part of our lifelong friendships. And I would like to also just take a second to recognize the board and the committee and all the people who have worked really hard to put this conference together. So I think we need to just recognize them and applaud them. Dr. Shah, Dr. Abadi, the entire board of directors, and all of the volunteers here today, and all of you, especially those of you who've traveled far to be here. So, round of applause to each and every one of you. Sarah, I'm going to ask you just to give me a heads up when my time is over, because I think it's 15 to 20 minutes, and I've taken 7 or 8 minutes right there. I was asked to speak about how to engage the greater community. And so for the next few minutes, I just want to reflect on what that means to engage the greater community. So in leadership training, I'm a big Covey fan. Stephen Covey's work is old, but to me it's as prominent and as forefront as ever before. There are a lot of people in this room who have great ideas. And I would encourage you to put all of those ideas forward. But how do you start? And what does it mean to engage the greater community? What does that even mean? So for some of us, like my own family, perhaps it's a little bit easier, and I admit that. When you are born and raised in this country, when you go to preschool and kindergarten, when your life is in the land that you work in and you try to help, of course the dynamic is going to be very different because I'm not inhibited. I don't have any issues with standing somewhere and smiling at someone and asking them how their day is. I don't have a problem walking in a parking lot and seeing a complete stranger and saying, how are you today? How is it going? That's a very natural thing for me to do. And I do credit that actually with being born and raised in this country where you're not so limited by boundaries. And I think that's been a help for me personally. But when you add the element of Islam to it, I find that Islam is the great motivator. I really do. I find that every single day that at least I wake up, and probably you wake up, the big question on the table is not what I can do for myself, not what you can do for yourself, but how do we plug in to the spiritual energy of this universe? How do we plug in to what God wants us to be, not what we think we ought to be? And for me, that's a big paradigm shift in the work that we're doing. It's that every single day waking up, being thankful for the ability to move and walk and speak, being able to take care of oneself, the ability to live and raise a family in a country that allows you the freedoms to do that, to put that to the side and then say, okay, I'm okay. What can I do for others who may not be as okay as I am? And what is the religious obligation that goes with that? For me, Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, as Anwar said, alayhi salatu wasalam, is not, and I think this is where we get messed up, is we want to encapsulate everything and say that it's ours. The Prophet is ours. His holy family is ours. That's not true. When God sent his last messenger, he said that this messenger is a mercy for all of humankind. So when we want to engage the greater community, if Islam really lives in our heart, the engagement is with all of humanity. Not with Shi'is, not with Sunnis, not only with Christians, but with everybody. Not just Ahlul Kitab. And where I take inspiration from, very powerful inspiration, I remind myself of it every single day, is Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. When he was, as you know, he loved to eat with people and always invited people. And this story, as we are taught by our wonderful scholars, is that the one time that he was eating with a human being and engaging him in discussion of monotheism and God, he asked him what his belief system is, and he says that he does not believe in God. And Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam dismisses this man, and Allah sends Jibreel immediately to speak to Ibrahim and to say, I know that he does not believe in me, but I continue to feed him every single day. This is where our heart needs to be. This is where our mind needs to be. There are enough people judging us every single day, but for us to stand in judgment of others, I think is a very difficult space to be in. If someone is hungry, feed them. If someone is homeless, find them a place to live. If someone is uneducated, educate them. What is the power in doing all of that? The power is the call that Islam has given to us, because Allah said that we, Muslims, that we are the ummah, the greatest of his people, the greatest ummah. But are we? If God said this of us, are we? Are we every single day in our lives trying to advance the word of faith? Now let's talk about that for a moment. When we talk about engaging the greater community, why is it that Zaman has, as you saw in the movie, the Latter-day Saints? It has African American, it has white, it has every single kind of population. Christians, Jews, atheists, you name it, everybody is coming into the doors of Zaman International. Why is that? We didn't put a flag up that says everyone here is welcome, come as you are. We're not a faith-based organization. We are based on faith principles, that's true. The reason is because when they come into the door of Zaman, they feel very simply welcomed. And they feel dignified. That's not hard to do when you're engaging the greater community. Sometimes, however, we want to push our agenda. And this is where Stephen Covey comes into play for me. He teaches you to begin with the end in mind. And every single day, I think we need to think about that end in mind. As I do end-of-life work, which many of you know I do as a nurse, I've learned the greatest lesson from the people who are dying, people who take their last breath. People have wisdom when they are dying. And when you hang out with people who are dying, you can learn a lot about living. And the one thing that I've learned from people who are dying is that it's one breath away. What separates me and death is one breath. It's not a movement. It's not a day. It's not 24 hours. It's not an hour. It's a millisecond. One breath. One breath. More heartbeats, but when breath stops, we cease to exist. So the question is, how are you going to use your breath? And so when God says, when God says to be the best that we can be, what does that mean? How many breaths a day are you going to take, and how are you going to balance those breaths between your family and your ummah and humanity? So when Stephen Covey says begin with the end in mind, I'm beginning with that last breath, not the breath I'm taking now, the last breath I'm going to take. And we should all keep that in mind. And he talks about putting first things first. Many times I see Muslims going out into the greater community, but they already know that they have this goal that sometimes isn't the most pleasant goal. And the goal is that you want to teach them about Islam. In order to engage with the greater community, you have to seek to understand one of the 7 habits of highly effective people, and then be understood. One of the other things that we have to do is, if even in our workplace, whether it's our workplace, our family homes, whatever it may be, the question is it a mission? Is your family a mission? Is your work a mission? Is your humanity a mission? And if the answer is yes, then you can engage with the greater community, because when something is mission and it has a vision that's comprehensive and inclusive, when you walk into that space, it's just like doing Allahu Akbar. You leave this behind, you're leaving yourself behind, and you're stepping into a space where you can engage the greater community. I want to speak to you just one more minute about what I find effective engaging the greater community. Simple. Smile. Be approachable. Be friendly. Ask people what you could do for them. And also invite them to a pool of conversation. When we're having critical conversations, no matter where you are, whether it's your kitchen table, whether it's the executive boardroom, whether it's a hospital administration, whether it's a NWAD globally, whether you're trying to solve for world hunger, whatever the situation may be, use this example and keep it close to your hearts and mind. Imagine that there's a pool in front of you, swimming pool, and everyone can jump into the pool. That's safe space. There's room for everyone's voices in that pool. But sometimes there's a kid who gets on the jumping board and jumps on the board and makes a big splash, and everyone kind of gets irritated. There has to be space and room for everyone's voices, or your work in engaging the greater community will not work. You have to be willing to listen, and you have to be willing to work with people. But I will tell you something. I believe in all of God's humanity, but there is something very special and strong about the ethical, principle-centered Muslim at the table. It brings a flavor that's very special and very deep. And when you learn, and I learn, that our adab speaks before anything else, then we've been able to engage the community. Open the doors for people, literally. I'm saying literally. Open the doors. Be the people. I should be the person of manners, of adab. Because without saying a word, the adab speaks first. And when the adab speaks, everything else follows. That's engaging in creating an inclusive community. If it's about me, it will die. It'll be very short-lived. The goal is very short-lived because it requires me. If your goal is about you, it will be very short-lived. But if your goal is about the greater good, there are endless goals, because it's not about you and it's not about me. It's about this great creator. It's about what he created. It's about this great humanity. It's about this beloved religion and the great religions before it. It's about Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and what he sacrificed for. And it is about his holy family and what they represent. The soldiers of his message, upholding all that is good and forbidding all that is evil. It's not hard work. You just have to get out of your own self in order to do the work. And I ask you for your kindness, your prayers, your constant support. And again, I wish you the very best in this beautiful weekend. And thank you for allowing me time to share with you. Don't forget about the pool and allow conversations to happen. Most of all, please, don't forget to smile. Please. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.